Hi, I'm Andy Logan, creator of the Shivers. As you know, we're midway through our Triple Terror Kickstarter campaign. Well, we thought what better way to spend this Friday the 13th than doing some questions and answers with you, our Shivers fans. So, I'll also follow this up with some favorite tips of mine on how to be the best storyteller you can be for our gaming group. But we asked you in one of our last updates to submit in comments any questions you have about the Shivers, how we got here, the future of the game, whatever comes to mind. So let's jump into those and have some fun. The first question is, the Shivers in space someday? Someone's wondering about, will the Shivers get into space? Well, that's a great question. You know, we're getting out of the house now. We're in this new expansions, getting into the town of Fogmore Cove. So we're going to be coming into the Natural History Museum for some great adventures. So we do see the Shivers expanding into the town of Fogmore Cove. Will they make it into space? I don't know, because this kind of brings up the future of our fledgling game company, Pop Fiction Games, which you'll notice has an S on the end of games, which means plural, which means maybe we might work on a new game in the future using our patented pop-up system we built. And that could be a space adventure game where we're exploring new worlds and spaceships and the space station with our pop-up environments. So the question's still a little open about how far can the Shivers go as a family versus us making an entirely new game geared around that specific theme like space. So not a specific answer to your question, but hopefully a bit of an answer that leads to some interesting future possibilities. Another question about developing a companion app for the Shivers, and that app might have pre-recorded dialogue for the NPCs that the storyteller can just play for their players. And that's something we hear sometimes from our fans who see the storyteller role as being too complex for them to take on, or maybe they only have two people and they both want to be players, and they'd much rather kind of offload the burden of the storyteller onto a companion app. So there's kind of a couple ways we could do it. It could be, as this fan is suggesting, that maybe it's just some canned voices of the characters, so that the storyteller doesn't have to speak in a funny accent for that character. Or it could be, could we use the power of new AI future technologies to actually augment the role of storyteller or take over as the role of storyteller and have that entirely app-driven. I think future time will tell, and this kind of ties into the previous question about, going into space themes. I think something with a futuristic space vibe would be a really interesting way to combine a mobile device app with our pop-up experience, because it's very much futuristic technology. But the Shivers has always been about celebrating the analog, putting our devices away, getting personal time together, celebrating what paper can do, celebrating what people can do just through storytelling without technology. So for the immediate goal, I think we want to carry that theme forward of celebrating the analog aspects of paper and physical in-person gameplay. But certainly for other games we might look at, a companion app might be a great way to integrate into the gameplay that fits more with that theme. Okay, next question. What inspired the pop-ups in the expansions? Okay, so we have 3 new pop-ups. We've got a dungeon, we've got a observatory, we've got a natural history museum, and of course the giant facade of Fogmore Manor. It's been over 2 years since we worked on our last pop-ups for the previous Shivers Kickstarter effort. So our team has actually been kind of chomping at the bit to develop some new pop-up rooms, some new stories, and so part of it was driven by, hey, we're not done. Let's keep this amazing world expanding and see what we can do with pop-ups, making them bigger, better, more interactive, new form factors. So a lot of it is kind of pushing the envelope of what we can do with pop-ups now that we've got such a strong system built. But each room has its own inspiration. For example, the observatory, the ominous observatory, was inspired by the scene from Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he takes the Staff of Ra headpiece to an imam in Cairo, and they're in this neat little observatory room with a hole in the wall and a telescope looking out and tapestries and lamps hanging, and that's where the monkey eats the poisoned date, I think. So that room and the decor of it and the lighting of it and the rich patterns and tapestries and scientific instruments really helped inspire the observatory. The Natural History Museum is inspired by our family trip to New York. We went to the Natural History Museum and saw all the amazing dioramas and skeleton dinosaur displays and neat relics and all the different rooms and collections. It's just such a rich experience that was inspired by the Natural History Museum. So hopefully by making it 4 times as big as our normal room, we can cram a lot of that interesting detail and scale of structures into the museum. The observatory, we talked about. The dungeon, the next one, was really inspired by a kind of medieval, I wanted to do like a medieval subterranean Gothic dungeon, that kind of classically inspired. I just saw the movie Name of the Rose with Sean Connery back from the 80s, I think it was, and it had some great dungeon as they kind of walk through this old monastery in northern Italy. Great dungeon scenes and lighting and rock walls, and so a lot of that has been incorporated into the dungeon room. So good question. What are some of your favorite ways to add ambiance to a Shivers game night? That's another great question. Certainly a storyteller can just read their little episode guide and manage the campaign along the way. But it's even more fun if you can kind of juice up the ambiance level a little bit. And some of my favorite ways to do this I'll get to talk about here. So one of the ways I don't recommend that seems most easiest to people is let's turn down the lights really low so it's really dark. Well, the Shivers relies on a lot of eyesight and looking into shadowed little corners to see clues and details and read books and things like that. And as the storyteller, also, they have to be able to see the writing clearly on the back of the walls in the clue windows here. So the lighting is actually, I don't recommend bringing it down. I'd recommend just your normal average room lighting should be fine. Certainly bring in additional phone lights or camera LED lights as needed to help illuminate things. But there are all kinds of interesting mood lights you can bring in, like little tea lights here that you can space around the room or around your tabletop. Certainly there's kind of prop lighting like we have here, these flickery candelabras you can get at a Halloween shop. That's a great way to do it. Sound, of course the storyteller can introduce their own sound effects like a door knocking or like a wolf howling or something like that with their voice. But we've also got a Spotify playlist on our website. There's a link to it where we've curated dozens of songs to help get you through your Shivers episode. Some familiar favorites and then some more obscure ones that will, but all will kind of set that spooky mood that we're going for. Or you can bring your own props into it, like whistles and horns and drums and whatever your imagination takes you. Those are fine too. There's also side props. You can, we have this bookshelf back here. We've got, for example, a little crow. Halloween shops have really good decorations right now. This is a good week to do it. Crows and skulls and masks and lighting and all that will be great props to kind of put around the table, not right in the gameplay zone, but maybe peripherally, just to set that mood of a magical, spooky time. Costumes are certainly an interesting way to do it. I've seen some people play the Shivers in hoods and cloaks that are really cool, especially at some game conventions when people are more dressed up. So those are a great way to get in character or in kind of that mindset. I've also noticed the No Rules Bard team did a great playthrough of the second expansion first episode, and the great storyteller there brought in, at the end of it, as a reward, they get some treasure of gold coins. Well, he actually brought in chocolate gold coins that he got at the shop the day before and passed those out to the players as rewards. So a nice, savory, sensory taste way to bring into the episode. He also had a little chalkboard he played a game of tic-tac-toe on with a little handheld chalkboard. So he's, being more of a dungeon master background, a game master, he knows when to bring in the right props, and I thought that was excellent to see. So look through your episode, and you're going to play and see where you might bring in an interesting prop to kind of enhance the gameplay. And, we talked about lighting and sound and taste even, but smell is really interesting. You can see in our add-on section on our Kickstarter page, we have a Shivers gaming candle, which has a wood wick, which crackles and sputters, and it lets smoke out. And it's a really neat wick that you probably haven't seen before, and it creates just a whole other sense of kind of setting the mood and the scent of the candle as well. We're going to have kind of an old library smell, or kind of a smoldering ember smell in the candle, and so that will really help the sound and the smoke and the scent of being in Fogmore Manor. So excited about that. Make sure to add that add-on in your Pledge Manager after the campaign ends. And that kind of leads us into our next section here, which is, in general, tips to enhance your storyteller experience beyond just setting the right ambience, things you can do to improve gameplay and the experience for your players. First, I'd give sufficient prep time. That's kind of the foundation of being a good storyteller. Give yourself at least 20 minutes to look through the episode guide, read through it, actually the whole thing, and then the summary, kind of all the steps the players need to go through. That's all very important. Certainly what standees and rooms you'll need, get those out, get them ready on the table. And then, of course, get your rooms ready, put the kickstands in to pop them up properly, put the story cards in the right rotations, and then take some time to also read the clue windows in the back. So all that should be a good 20 minutes or more. But if you do what we were saying before, let's think about all those ambiance things we can bring into it, enhancing those effects. A little extra planning. You might have to go to the store to get a certain item. Whatever it takes to kind of enhance that ambiance part, that's all part of preparation. So being well prepared ahead of time will show to your players. They can tell when you're kind of rushing things. So yeah, just be as prepared as possible, especially if you're introducing some interesting sensory effects into the game. But that's only halfway there. So the next part of yourself as a storyteller that you want to make sure you're doing is setting the right environment, even down to the table itself. So the table is actually pretty important. I found like coffee tables in front of a couch to be not great for the Shivers. They're usually smaller. You're probably sitting on your knees for an hour. You can't quite see the rooms at the right angle. You're looking up a bit too high. That's not well lit in general, that area. So everything's a bit dark. So I actually recommend more of a dining table where you can spread out. The game can extend a few feet in either direction. They're well lit usually in a dining area, so you've got good overhead lighting, and the storyteller naturally would sit on one side and the players on the other. So the dining table is, from what I found, just kind of the perfect height to play the Shivers at. And then the last tip I'll share is one of the most important for being flexible as a storyteller, and that's what I call say yes to the request. The player makes a request to do their action. It's unusual, it's weird, it's not what you were thinking, but trying not to say no to it and say yes to it, and let's see what happens. Because the way the Shivers episodes are written, the way the game is structured, players can take any action. They can lift up the piano and throw it out the front door if they want to. In most cases, that will do absolutely nothing to advance the steps of the story, but they have that agency to freely do whatever they want in this game. And so as a storyteller, your urge will be to say, no, you can't do that. But again, you're not there to be the judge of their logic as they try to solve this puzzle. You're there to be the enabler of their imagination as they try to work through this story together. And whether it's a useless step they want to take or something downright crazy, again, just saying yes to that request is important. And here's some tips to kind of go through that. There's a few types of requests I've seen where that's you're kind of tempted to say no. One is if they find maybe an alternate solution to what you've proposed in the story, where let's say they have to find a certain key to open a door, but they want to brute force that door open. What to do in that case. Or maybe their request is just totally crazy, does not advance the story, but they want to take a time out and just do a crazy action. That's a time you might be tempted to say no. Or three, if there's someone being aggressive or bullying or kind of ruining the game for the other players, that's another time where you can actually step in and resolve things through the game. So let's look at those cases one by one. In the first case, we talked about kind of brute forcing through a step, like a door that needs a key, and they don't have the key yet because they haven't gone in and found it in another room, but there's a giant bowl in the room, and they want to take a red tablecloth off the table and shake it like this and have the bowl crash into the door and break open the door that they wanted to use the key for that they don't have yet. So that's obviously, something the storyteller would have to look at to see, is this going to break the game? Did they need that key for some other reason in the future? By not going into the room and getting that key, are they missing some key steps that'll prevent them from advancing future in the episode or finding a crucial item? So it's kind of a case-by-case basis. The storyteller will have to look at their request, see what it means to kind of break through that step. If they're already at that step naturally anyway and they should be progressing to the next one and they just found an alternate way to do it, that may be okay. But it's up to the storyteller to look through and see, how am I going to be kind of breaking the storyline if I advance them sooner than they would have been if they'd kind of gone through the proper steps. So see if it breaks anything or advances them too far in the story to where they skip things they need. Certainly use the red dice if it's a really kind of outlandish decision. The red dice will most likely pull them back from it because it's more backfires or doesn't work than positive outcomes. Or as a fallback, if they do this thing, you could just say, hey, you did it and it doesn't work. The bowl crashed into the door, but it was not strong enough to open it. So you have a lot of different options there as a storyteller. In the second case, so they want to do something just crazy. Some players are like that. They want to stand on the kitchen table and dance an Irish jig for their turn, and while eating a banana and singing some folk songs. Hey, if that's who they want to play as their character and it doesn't advance the story or hurt anything, let them do that. You can also use the red dice to kind of discourage them a little bit, to say, oh, you did it and you fell off and you broke your ankle, you tore your fancy dress. So once they get that out of their system a few times, they usually pull back onto the mainstream of trying to solve the episode, because each of their turns just successfully really does not advance the party at all. In a third case, occasionally we've seen players that are a little more bullying, a little more aggressive, kind of generally trying to ruin everyone's time or dominate the whole table. Well, think of the storyteller as the house. They're playing a character themselves, Fogmore Manor. They're playing as the house. And it's a magic house, and it can do anything. So a giant hand can come and scoop up that player and lock them in a cabinet, or they get shrunken down by a spell into one of the tiny sizes, or insert a complication like a rat comes and steals all their inventory and gives it to another player. Because in this house, during this hour, at this time in the Shivers, the storyteller is God, and whatever they say happens in the game. So hopefully some good tips there on how to be a great storyteller. Thank you for spending the Friday the 13th watching some Shivers tips and Q&A. I will remember we're trying to unlock another stretch goal We need, by midnight tonight, just 15 more shares on social media, and we've unlocked our latest stretch goal then. So we really need your help to tackle that one. Again, have a great Friday the 13th. Thanks for tuning in.